Hey,
Hey,
that was fast. That ended really quick. Hey, everyone. Everyone. That means me and Kat. I think we're live. I hope we're live. Yeah, we are.
yeah, we are.
This is the Cinema Gulp test run of our first live StreamYard that we've ever done. And I want to thank Anti-Derivative Jill and Scott AR37 for their help because my simple jack brain was just not up to the task. So I appreciate that. And I'm here with Kat from the Fantasmagorium Show. Hey, Kat.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for helping me with this and being a part of this because I could not go on this by myself. I can't believe Cinema Club is live. I mean, it's the first time we've ever done this before, so I'm excited.
Thanks.
I'm excited. I'm nervous, and yeah. So we'll see how things go. If somebody jumps on and wants to chat, hopefully I can figure out how to work out the chat. But until then, we're going to do what we always do on this channel, Kat, and we're going to talk about movies. And we're going to talk about a particular movie because the last time there was a Ghostbusters movie out, I also had Kat on. And I think we had similar views. I think I was a little more high on Afterlife than she was, but I have no idea what she's going to say about Frozen Kingdom or Empire, and she has no idea what I'm going to say, but I'm going to let her lead. So, Kat, what did you think of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire?
Well, I liked it better than the last one. Uh,
Same.
yeah, I like because to sum up for those who maybe didn't watch that video, my general dislike with the previous movie is that it felt like they were trying to make it a drama, and every time a nostalgia point showed up,
Well, they were trying to make it Stranger Things.
right, and every time a nostalgic thing came up, they framed it like this grandiose reverence, like when Indy and Sala raised the Ark out of the Well of the Souls. But in that movie, it makes sense because it's the Ark of the Covenant. It's this mythical thing that people have been looking for thousands of years. Whereas Ghostbusters, it's like, guys, it's just Ghostbusters. Why are you treating it like everything you're unveiling is the Ark, in that movie? And I didn't think the kids were that funny and they didn't have chemistry or whatever. And it was like a Ghostbusters movie where the thing that was missing was the Ghostbusters. And in this
Yeah, right.
movie, right, and this movie I thought was fun. It's more of a comedy than the last one. It still borrows some of the more serious tone, which I didn't care for as much. I like that they don't focus exclusively on the kids this time. I think Dan Aykroyd and Ernie Hudson have a lot more screen time, which is great. They're actually, main supporting characters in the movie. Uh, I like that they come up with new lore this time rather than just recycling an old villain. Like people were thinking, oh, is this since they're the first one or the last one redid Gozer, maybe they're just going to redo Vigo this time. It's like no, they did something new, and I like that.
Yeah, even though that villain in this one was kind of an afterthought towards the end, it was so
Yeah, it kind of was, but I like at least that it was new. I didn't feel it was overstuffed. A lot of people are complaining about that. I found the story pretty easy to follow, and the story beats pretty easy to connect with. Uh,
same.
and I thought it was fun. I just wish they leaned more into comedy more because the climax felt like it was, standard, action sci-fi thing rather than, being a comedy. It tried to be kind of like a drama again. But for the most part, I still had fun with it.
Me too. And I think it's the best use of Slimer since the first one because they gave Slimer a moment where the crowd cheered. You know what I'm? Yeah, and you know what? I'm not going to go into spoilers, but you know what I'm talking about? Like towards
Yeah,
the end when shit was happening, you get that Slimer moment where he does something that helps the plot. It helps the good guys, and you're like, oh, it was so earned, even if that CGI pizza was ridiculous because it didn't make any sense. But I
right.
love that scene.
Yeah,
Um,
I
I
like.
th- I think that Dan Aykroyd wanted to be a huge part of this. He always wanted to do more Ghostbusters movies, and it shows in this one. And it's so great. It's so great to see Ray Stantz like doing his thing.
Well,
And
yeah, because even Dan Aykroyd in real life is into this type of stuff. He
yeah,
likes paranormal, and so
well,
it's
his
to see
character
that.
was always the heart and soul of the movies. I mean, Venkman was, the dry sense of humor everyman, but
Yeah,
Ray was always the heart and soul, in my opinion, and
right. He's kind of like the funny guy where Egon Spengler was more of the nerdy scientist, which they made a joke about in the second one.
yeah,
But
yeah.
uh, you could tell that Aykroyd was loving every minute of being in this movie.
Oh my God. And he works so good with, I know a lot of people, Kat, are saying like, they shouldn't have brought back like the girl and they shouldn't have brought back podcast. I think Podcast was the best character from the first or from Afterlife.
I don't
So,
understand why his name is Podcast. That's just still a
well,
little
because
weird
he
to me.
had a podcast in the first one, I guess.
Right, but it's like he doesn't have a character name. It's like, okay, it's a little weird. And why
But
did
I
he's
but
not
I
part
love
of the
that they
he's
brought
not
him
part of
back
the
because
family.
that kid is so good. Even with the tiny little bit of screen time he got, it was great. Even though he's older, like I just wanted more.
I only saw Afterlife that one time. I haven't seen it since then. So
Okay.
they didn't give a reason as to why he came to New York with them, did they? 'Cause I
Well,
know the other girl's an intern.
it was a thing that I said actually in the theater in John's ear because he goes I want to be with Ray, you know, and I'm here studying with Ray.
Oh, okay.
But he goes, I told my parents I'm going to space camp, and I told John,
Oh, that's right.
I go,
Mhm.
how do don't his parents have to pay for that? Like
Well, yeah,
how?
that's the thing which I was kinda confused by because he's still like a teenager or whatever. Like he's not an adult. And then they brought back the other girl, Lucky. It's like, okay, she's there, but I'm glad they don't get a ton of attention because again,
No,
I didn't find the
she
kids.
was worthless, man.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
found all
no
well, honestly, I
disrespect to
found
the
all
actor.
the I found all the kids to not be endearing at all in the previous one because it's like these are kids dressing up as Ghostbusters who aren't funny and they don't have chemistry together and they're just, ooh, look, you're using Ghostbuster stuff. It's like, okay, why don't we get the Ghostbusters back?
Well, the first one made sense because, or I'm not the first one. Afterlife made sense because they were all like finding these things. You know, it was like a thing where they're just like searching for stuff, and you know, it's like an adventure for kids. This one back in New York, yeah, you didn't need to have those extra kids. It was
Yeah.
shoehorned in because they didn't want to leave them out, and I get that, but they just didn't
Well,
have anything to do,
well,
especially
the same thing with Finn Wolfhard in the previous movie. He's just there because they wanted to bring in the Stranger Things crowd, but he didn't really have anything to do.
oh, he had less to do in this one.
Yeah, he's just kind of there again. It's like, okay. I thought it was funny how he's trying to bait Slimer. That was kind of funny. Uh,
Oh, that was one of the best scenes, like, because
yeah,
from what I understand, like, most of the Slimer was done practical, and I was like, "Really?" Because it looked so CGI, but apparently they say that they did Slimer with opticals, and I was like, "Holy shit,
that's kind
interesting."
of cool.
Yeah, didn't expect that, but yeah.
But yeah, so I like that, and they did something new here, which they've never really brought up in any Ghostbusters movie before, which is the notion of there being very real, normal human ghosts uh, who aren't like terrorizing people through the character of Melody. And it's like, well, now that you've opened that box where she makes a joke at one point that, oh, this is the ghost extermination building. It's like now you've kind of addressed something kind of dark about what the Ghostbusters do. Because even at one point, somebody makes a joke saying, "Oh, it's the ghost prison or ghost jail inside the, in the containment thing."
I thought that was a great angle about how the containment thing has just been sitting there, and it's so full that, like,
Right,
that
but
was a good thing, yeah.
it was. I just thought it was odd that they, now in the fifth movie, they finally decide to address that there's normal ghosts out there who don't necessarily want to be caught, but they didn't really do anything with it in this movie.
Are you talking about the girl?
Yeah, the girl Melody.
Who's just like a regular girl, and, like, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, she's not an evil ghost that well, no, it's kind of the first movie, right, Cat, where they show, like, a ghost is just a normal person that just wants to go to heaven. You know, like, they don't all deserve to be exterminated and
right, and
destroyed.
that's why this was kind of the first movie that sort of addressed it that way, but then they didn't really do anything with it
No, they
because
didn't, because
they
they
just
turned it
used a
into
plot device.
something.
They used it
Yeah,
ultimately as a plot device.
yeah.
And it's like, okay, because previously, when you see the human ghosts, they're either monsters or they look kind of monstrous, like the Scoleri brothers in Ghostbusters 2. They don't look human. They look kind of like weird monsters. And then you have things like Slimer and the serpent ghost or the slime from the second one. And whereas the ones which are kind of human or monstrous, like Vigo and Gozer. But this is the first time that it's like, okay, this is like a totally normal person who's not like dark or evil or monstrous. It's just, and I'm like, that's kind of interesting. Are you like the first ghost like that? Because but so that was. I think they could have done something more with that, but whatever.
What up, Movie Malice? Thank you, man. I appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You don't have to stay on if you don't want, but I appreciate it because I threw out something to everyone. Like, if you want to just come and help me figure out how to work out the comments and stuff, just drop something, and that way I can figure it out. So thank you, dude. But yeah, dude, there's a lot of really great. Okay, Kat, I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. Like, I think the script of this movie was kind of a mess, and what I
Yep.
mean by a mess is it was unfocused. I'll give Afterlife this, even though it didn't feel like Ghostbusters, it felt like Stranger Things. It was very focused on what it was trying to do,
Mm.
except for the ending where just the Ghostbusters just like magically appear. But this one, like, for a while, for the first 45 minutes, I'm like, dude, what the fuck is going on in this movie? But I was still loving it because Paul Rudd's great. I think Carrie, is her name Carrie Coon
Yeah.
from The Leftovers, who was so fucking great in that show. If anyone hasn't seen The Leftovers, she's amazing. She was just bad in this movie, like not acting, just the character. And I love there's a moment where Phoebe goes, you'd be answering the phones if your name wasn't Spangler. And I'm like, I kind of agree with that. That was pretty harsh, but you remember the scene I'm talking about, Kat, where she's
Yeah.
like, Mom, you'd be answering the phones, like, because you're not a Ghostbuster, you're just a person,
Yeah, it's I didn't think it was that unfocused in the first 45 minutes. I could see clearly that, they set up the orb in the prologue and then they catch up with why these characters in New York and the paranormal, but it's like, okay, they're setting some stuff up and then they kind of roll along with it. But
fair enough.
I like that they don't also spend too much time on the whole family dynamic things. Like they spent so much time on that in the previous movie because again, it wasn't really trying to be a Ghostbusters movie. It was like this quasi family thing, and I thought it was odd that they wanted that whole previous movie to be surrounding Egon Spengler. And it's like, I get it, Harold Ramis is gone and we miss him, but is that really the right decision to make for the movie, to have the whole thing surrounding a guy who's not there anymore? Maybe. But
yeah, well, this one, it still paid tribute to him because you have this, and the genius thing about the first one was making the family Spanglers, so that way you can have the heart from Harold Ramis in it without having to have him in it. And I didn't find the ghost scene in Afterlife offensive. I thought it was actually very respectful because he
yeah,
didn't
that was fun.
yeah, he didn't talk. It was just like a quick scene, and he got to look over at his fellow Ghostbusters, and they nodded to him. And I was like, you know what, that's pretty great, But this one moves away from that, goes back to New York, and this family, which I thought the dynamic of the family was good overall, especially Paul Rudd, who I'm assuming, Kat, they never say it, but I'm guessing they got married because he's a stepdad, right? He's the stepdad.
Yeah, because they make the joke where she says step teacher. He's not going to go that whole, make that leap yet.
But I don't think they ever say they got married, but
no, they don't. They don't mention it.
But it seems like they did, because at the end she calls him dad, and he's like, "Oh my god, she called me dad." And it's like, okay,
Well,
well,
maybe they married
spoilers, everyone, spoilers. Sorry, I don't know how to put up a spoiler warning, guys. Sorry, I'll figure that out.
Yeah, that it was just. Well, they aren't necessarily married, but whatever.
I think they might be, though. They just didn't say it directly because it's supposed to be like 3 years later, right? Or 2 years later, something like that. But I don't know why, Kat. I don't know why the Stay Puft Marshmallow Minions are in this fucking movie. They never explain it. They're just there. I get it. Maybe it's a toy thing or like a thing to sell something, but
it's, that's the element I also felt was missing from the movie, and that the whole Stay Puft Marshmallow Man scene from the first movie was so out of left field and so hilarious. I'm like, this movie needed something like that was totally hilarious in the climax to harken back to what Ghostbusters ultimately is, which is an SNL sketch. Like, yes. I watched the first movie the other night, and it's magical in that it's a movie where you don't have any character arcs. Nobody learns anything. Nobody becomes a better person. It's just one random set piece after another, kind of loosely connected, that ends up forming this interesting story. But it had all this irreverent humor in it, and I felt this needed that. And throughout all these sequels, they keep referencing the Stay Puft Marshmallow Men and bringing the little ones back, rather than trying to come up with something new to fulfill that same narrative purpose, which is the only reason they're there. It's like, oh, remember the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man? It's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly. And in this one, they're literally, I mean, that scene was pretty funny though, where like podcast is like, I think they're mating, but I think they're trying to all kill themselves. That was kind of funny, but yeah.
Well, kind of like Slimer's another one. Like they've never really explained why Slimer exists. Like what exactly was he or is he? It was just a funny gag in the first movie. They have him show up once in the sequel where he's driving the bus, and then because that became a token symbol of the cartoon show, they've just
I think,
been
yeah,
bringing
yeah.
him back. But this time, like you said, they actually gave him something to do
He
and
was
used him
and he
rather
was
well.
great. This was and it's funny because you know that like Slimer only resides in New York City because that's why, you know, they created like the Chomper or something, the last one that was like a pale imitation of Slimer. But I've heard a lot of talk, Kat, that this one takes more after the cartoon from certain plot point. I mean, I watched the cartoon, but I don't remember. You know, I didn't pay super attention to it, but I did watch the cartoon, and it kind of makes sense. Like, I remember that Janine, you know, the receptionist, she did have like an arm proton pack in the cartoon, and that was cool. Even though they kind of screw it up where like they show her like loading it, but they never show her using it in the movie. You know,
Yeah.
like, I was like, oh my god, there's an arm proton pack, but she never uses it.
Yeah, that was kind of funny. She was in, with Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray doing a promotional thing on one of the morning shows the other day, and they brought up the fact because it's in the trailer that, oh, you finally got to suit up, and she's like, he says the typical thing that you're obligated to say when promoting a movie. Oh yes, finally, I've been waiting 40 years for this. I'm like, really?
She was still good to see in it, and Annie Potts still looks great. It was
Oh yeah,
awesome. It was awesome to see her. Like,
yeah.
and you know, it shows like without Rick Moranis wanting to be involved in this, like it almost would have been interesting if she was the actual mother of the Carrie Coons character, because you know, in the first movie, it was kind of hinted that she was with Egon, but then in the second movie, they kind of ditched that.
Right, because in the second movie, there's a whole subplot where Janine and Lewis start dating,
Yeah, which was
and
funny,
and
but
they're a couple seemingly at the end of the movie, but that's of course never addressed. Like, I figured that maybe she would say something like a one-off line hinting that maybe she's still with Lewis or something, but no, they didn't even acknowledge it.
no, they didn't. Well, because he just doesn't. Rick Moranis, I don't
Well,
know
no, I
what
get that he doesn't want to, but I thought that maybe they would pay lip service to the idea that maybe they're still together or something.
he probably had a 2-minute scene, and he was like, "No, fuck that. Like, I'm not doing it." Well, I have no idea. I don't base that on anything, but over, you know, I thought there was really good moments in this movie. I wasn't connecting with it complete. You know what I wanted, Kat? You know
Hmm.
what I wanted, which the entire world wanted, was more Venkman. But when Venkman shows up and does the pen tossing at Kamal Nanjiani's head, that's the funniest scene in the movie for me.
Hmm.
Like, it was great. It was great. You know, like you're like that. You know, it's a harken back to when he was lighting the guy
Yeah,
up.
like yeah, the
He's like,
girl.
so we're trying to record your emotions. He's like, I can tell you what it's doing. It's pissing me off.
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, and apparently Sigourney Weaver was not asked to be back, which I get why, because
Well, yeah, there's nothing. I mean,
yeah, there's nothing for her to do. Yeah.
yeah, because I can't remember if her and like they don't address if her and Venkman have gotten back together completely at the end of Ghostbusters 2 because they mentioned that they broke up. But
Well, at
it's
the
like
end of
they don't really
Ghostbusters
need her
2,
to come back.
they're end of Ghostbusters 2, they're kissing. It seems like they're back, and then in Afterlife, that post-credit scene, you see them kind of together. I'm
Oh,
assuming
that's
they're
right. I
living together.
forgot. I forgot what happened to that post-credit scene again.
That was just her doing the thing to him, where she's zapping him, you know, same kind of scenario.
Okay, so they're either together or they're just still friends.
Yeah.
But yeah, because there's not. I mean, her character didn't have much. Like in the first one, she's the female co-lead damsel in distress thing, and the second one is because she has the baby. And I thought maybe they would push it further and say that one of the people working at Winston's new facility was, the grown-up Oscar. That's a
Was
perfect
Oscar.
plot.
I thought it might be the British guy.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be him until he started
Yeah.
talking, and I heard he was British, and I'm like,
Well,
okay.
no, even still though, because if he lived with his dad, because remember they said that the dad was in Europe. I was like, maybe that's Oscar,
Oh, okay.
but it wasn't though. So
Yeah, but yeah, I see why they wouldn't ask that because, like, they did that story twice already with, Dana. It's like, the same kind with Lewis. He was goofy, he was funny, but the joke was that he was living next door to Dana and was wanting to, date her or whatever, and nothing comes of that.
Yeah, that's true. That's
He was
true.
kind of the lovable nerd. I remember because I just watched Ghostbusters 2 last night when she asks Lewis to babysit, and she comes home to find him like making out with Janine on the couch, and she's not upset or anything.
No.
Dana's smiling because she thinks it's really cool. But
Yeah.
there's we all love Mirko Moranis and things, but then when you actually take a step back and think about it, it's like, is there a reason for his character to be in the movie?
That's the thing. Everyone was dying for him to be in it, but I'm like, why would he be in it? Yeah.
Right. And I thought that given how much the last one was just regurgitating nostalgia, that I assumed that he would maybe have a cameo, because a couple of years ago he showed up on camera for a commercial with Ryan Reynolds for some company that Ryan has, and it was funny. And I thought, oh, well, maybe he'll show up in a little bit thing here, but he didn't, and that's fine.
No, I think he supposedly there's going to be like a new Honey, I Shrunk the Whatever movies, and he's kind of holding out because he's going to be a big part of that. And it's like, that's okay, I guess. Whatever. Do what you got to do, man. We love you, Rick. Do whatever you got to do. Yeah. But I'll say this. Aside from, okay, so maybe the script's not super unfocused. I think maybe the reason I thought it was is because there's so many characters in this movie. And the editor actually did a pretty good job of balancing them. But I think I don't mind Patton Oswalt. I know a lot of people hate him. I don't mind him, but his character didn't need to be there because he's in one scene. And, you're a Ghostbuster fan, right?
Yeah.
Ray Stantz should have been the guy that would have figured that out on his own.
Oh, exactly. He would know that instantly.
He would know that instantly. Yeah.
I think it's there because they wanted an excuse to go. They wanted an excuse to go to the library because, again, Ray would otherwise have that in his occult bookstore. You wouldn't have to go to the New York Public Library because there is a callback in the library, which actually makes sense from something that happens in the first movie. It's not just a cheap thing that they do yes, it is for the sake of nostalgia, but it actually fits with the story when you think about what happened in the first movie. And so I'm like, okay, that kind of works. And the Patton Oswalt character, he is like you mentioned, people may think from watching the trailer that, oh, he's Patton Oswalt, he's going to be a big character in the movie, but no, he's only in the one scene, which is fine.
Right.
But I agree 100%. Ray would have known all of that about the orb because he's so into that.
Yeah, he would
just immediately have those books on his shelf.
Honestly, when Kamal showed up with that orb, he probably would have known what it was if it was the other, the old Ray that we knew. He would have been like, oh my God, where did you get this? But instead, he just didn't know what it was. And that's fine because you have to have your mystery. And with that, you have to have your investigation. And that was some of my favorite stuff of the movie was Dan Aykroyd, because he's a huge part of this movie, huge part. Which
he's a huge part of the entire franchise. He's the one who came up with the idea for Ghostbusters. And
I know that. I just mean his character in this movie is one of the main characters, which is great. Ernie Hudson's so big part, but not as big as Ray is. And
that was such a weird thing about the previous movie is that they specifically made the part where Ray answers the phone, the final bit in the trailer. That was like the mic drop moment. And they don't even show his face. It's just a close-up on his hand when he picks up the phone and says, sorry, we're closed. And that was like the director, Jason Reitman, was consciously aware of the fact that people want to see the original Ghostbusters, but they're not giving you that whole movie. Whereas this movie, it's like front and center, right up front. Gil Kenan is like, we're putting Dan Aykroyd up here. We're making him one of the main characters and driving force of the story. Yes, that's already, you're already off to the right foot compared to last time.
Yeah, and I love even though I think Jason Reitman is a great writer-director, I've loved a lot of his movies.
That's true. He co-wrote this one.
Yeah, but this guy, even though he did a shitty movie recently, he did Monster House, which is an older animation movie, but it's so fucking good. I don't know if you ever seen Monster House, but
I did.
I love that movie. I love it. So yeah, I was like, it's kind of in good hands. And there was some rush stuff for sure, because I'm guessing there was just so many rewrites of the script that you have, one of the things I love, you have that family dynamic where Paul Rudd is trying to earn the trust of the kids. Mm-hmm. Well, he doesn't really care about Finn Wolfhard because he's like 18 now, but that scene where he's, spoilers, he's talking to her through the door and she's not there. I love that scene. I love that scene. I
Yeah,
love it.
that was really good. And I also feel that this is, again, admittedly slightly contrived because it's like, again, it's been like 2 or 3 years since the first movie. So he's
Yeah.
been living with them this whole time, which is the clear implication. So the idea that he's only just now like coming around to maybe being deaf, I feel like this probably would have happened a couple years ago at least, or 1 or 2 years into this, rather
Well,
than
you know what it is? I think after the first movie, they just got thrusted into being Ghostbusters. So they've been doing that forever. And it took McKenna Grace's, it took what's her name again?
Phoebe.
It took Phoebe to start being kind of a brat because she can't be a Ghostbuster because of her age, for him to really say, like, I need to start stepping in and being a dad, which is why I think they are married. They just don't say it.
Well,
But
a lot of people are together who aren't married. It doesn't really matter. But
yeah, it doesn't really matter. But the fact that she calls him dad at the end, I'm like, okay, well, they're clearly, those two are clearly together,
well, no, I never. That's why I thought that part of the story was a bit contrived because it's like it's clear they've been living together. They even say they've been living in the firehouse as a family for like almost 2 or 3 years now. Which is why it's not like Winston said, go in the firehouse and start catching ghosts, but oh, by the way, the containment thing is about to be full. It's like, no, it wasn't full when they got there because they've been here for a couple of years now. So that's why it's kind of like they gave him something. They needed to give Paul Rudd something to do. It's like, even though he's standing front and center in the poster, as we see in the background there, he's not really as front and center of the movie as the poster would imply.
He's the biggest name outside of the original cast. Yeah.
Right. And like Dan Aykroyd is much more front and center than Paul Rudd was. But I also thought that was another interesting
Firehouse Subs. Yes. Never been there.
Point that Winston apparently is the one who moved them into the firehouse and is paying for them to be there.
Yeah. Do you have the same problems with that I do, especially when he's
yeah, because the whole movie and the whole thing is that they mentioned in Ghostbusters 2 that they got sued like crazy for all the damage that the climax of the first one caused, and they don't have any money or anything like that. Ray is still running an occult bookstore and hasn't been able to turn that around to make a lot of money on it, and yet Winston sort of comes out of nowhere and he's got this whole separate facility on Long Island, and he's got all these people he's able to hire. And
well, they say it in Afterlife that he made a lot of money, so he yeah.
They just seem kind of weird that he actually is willing to pay to relocate them to New York so you guys could be the Ghostbusters now.
Well, the thing that was weird to me, Kat, was that he had them live in the firehouse with the old Ghostbusters car, with the old Ghostbusters tech, but then he had this whole other facility that he didn't tell them about where they could have upgraded all their equipment. It made no sense. And then when he yells at Ray for taking out the kids, those kids could have got hurt. Dude, you're the one that let a kid be a Ghostbuster. So it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's like I didn't really follow that logic very well, because it's like and plus it's like I guess he didn't check the containment unit to see that it was going to be running full in a couple of years. Like, well, you didn't bother calling him to tell him, by the way, because he said it's going to take like 7 years to transport all the ghosts out of the firehouse and into the new
center. I'm guessing that.
Well, why haven't you started this a few years ago then?
Well, see, none of it makes sense because part 2 fucks everything up, Kat, because they're like, well, nobody was there. Nobody witnessed this thing. These guys are a bunch of hokey, fake guys. But it's like that containment unit is probably why they never bulldozed that building, right?
Right.
So why didn't they bulldoze that building? Even if like 30 years goes by and nobody occupies that building, because that containment unit is down there. So if no one was in that building the entire time, then that thing's just sitting down there. And I do really like how they're like, it's getting full. It's getting full. Right. That was a good aspect, but it's like, wow. So no one's been down there and pulled a lever or anything in 30 years.
Well, to your point, it's like this bit when Phoebe tells the mayor that you're the one who, caused the disaster from the first movie 40 years ago. And he's like, that's slander. You can go to jail for slander, as if but I thought she was going to fire back and say, well, it's not slander if it's true, but she doesn't. It's just like he says, like, being a typical politician, he takes the position that, oh, that never happened, type of thing. But even though the other Ghostbusters, the OG Ghostbusters, are in the room, they don't stick up and say anything like, hey, man, you're the one who screwed us. They don't back her up on that claim.
Yeah, they do. That's my entire point, is like part 2 fucked everything up by saying like nobody remembers the thing with the Vigo or not Vigo with
Gozer.
Gozer. It was so weird to me when part 2 opened up. It's like nobody knows who you are anymore. Nobody trusts you. It's like, what? They saved the city and possibly the world.
Yeah, it would have made
The
sense if
second
they
one, they
said,
do it,
it
but
would have
then
made more sense if they said that the slime accumulating, the ghost slime or something had something to do with it, like causing
right.
amnesia or something. But no, it's just it was because the running joke with Ghostbusters 2 is that they had no story because what Dan Aykroyd originally wanted to do from the first movie was to have him and Egon, traveling through time and space being
Yeah.
Ghostbusters, but that was too cost prohibitive, which is why they ended up doing the first movie the way they did. And so, seeing as he didn't have any other such stories that were more grounded like that to tell, the running joke was for the second movie, we'll just make it pretty much a remake of the first one, except instead of them struggling to get the business started, now it'll be them struggling to be taken seriously again. And then the rest of the movie just beat for beat, same thing.
But there was a better way to do it than just like.
Oh yeah, I agree. I'm just saying that's probably why that happened. It's like it didn't feel like they really tried to come up with new ideas for the sequel. It was just like the whole joke was that this is what a typical sequel is. It's just a rehash of what was already a one note film. Like another friend of mine said that Ghostbusters is like a one movie franchise. They've been trying to turn it into.
Oh no,
like
really Red Letter Media has been saying that for years. It's like it's the first movie is a flawless, perfect comedy that takes itself seriously. It's got scares. It's hilarious. But it didn't need to have a part 2, but I understand why it did, of course.
Well, that's why I feel that all the fake outrage when they did the reboot and then with Afterlife and this one and all the hate that this new one is getting, it's like, guys, Ghostbusters was never this super precious thing. It was an SNL skit that they dragged out for 1 hour, 40 minutes, and it worked like flawless magic. And everything they've tried since then didn't work. It's like, it's not worth getting this upset about,
we did a review of the 2016 one. And my only outrage was I just didn't think it was funny. But
yeah, I didn't think it was funny. I laughed twice, both at times at Chris Hemsworth. One of those
Chris Hemsworth was the best part of the movie.
Right, because my issue with that was that it was like, yes, we can suspend our disbelief to accept that there's ghosts and the paranormal, all that. But I thought that the characters who were playing the Ghostbusters, those characters felt like caricatures in cartoons. They were just so ridiculous trying to do these over the top slapstick SNL crap in every scene that it just didn't. It's like you're losing me. It's like I can't.
That was the problem. They loaded up the entire Ghostbusters roster of 3 people from SNL, and then Melissa McCarthy, who wasn't an SNL alum, but
right. And it was just
they're just all trying to do their own shtick, and it just didn't work.
Yeah, because the humor of the first movie is that it's very deadpan. Like Ray and Egon firmly believe everything they're saying. Winston is more or less like the proxy of the audience, the everyman, and then Bill Murray is just like typical. He's Bill Murray about it. That's kind of what's funny about it. And they didn't have that in the reboot, and they didn't really have that in Afterlife either because it was taking everything way too seriously. But now they brought some of that back.
I think Kristen Wiig was supposed to be the Venkman, but she just.
Sort of.
And she kind of was in certain scenes, but then she wasn't in other scenes. So yeah, I don't know. I didn't get it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't like it, but I didn't have this unbelievable torrent of outrage about it like so many.
No, I didn't either. There was things I enjoyed about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but this I think is actually, suffice it to say, it's probably my second favorite Ghostbusters movie after the original because.
I might have to agree with you on that.
Yeah, because Ghostbusters 2, again, it's rehashing the first one. It's not as funny. Yes, I find the Janos character to be great and Vigo to be memorable, but that doesn't necessarily make up for everything else in the movie. And definitely better than Afterlife in the reboot. So I think I don't think it should be getting the amount of hate that it's getting. I mean, I've watched some critical reviews and they're like, oh, there's too much to keep track of. We can't follow it. I'm like, this is an easy movie to follow. It just has an ensemble, and each character in the ensemble has their own thing going on.
Why am I drippings with goo? I love Janusz Poha, dude.
He's great. I would have loved it if they could come up with some cheap excuse, even a cameo, to have him come back.
Why not? He was a New York art dealer. Like he could be there still or whatever. He was.
I mean, they went back and got Walter Peck, and it's like,
oh, they wasted him, dude. They did.
It's like I wanted to see what his reaction was going to be when the entire city starts getting frozen over by ice.
Well, no, but they had this perfect opportunity at the end where him and Venkman are standing face to face, and they don't do anything with it.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been so good. I mean, fuck, like,
Yeah, I thought it was gonna happen at the end there.
like you said,
Like,
some dumb ADR moment where they say Dickless. That should have been Bill Murray going, "Hey, Dickless," or something.
right.
Yeah, like,
I thought what was gonna happen was that I thought Slimer was gonna fly out of the firehouse and just fly right into him and just totally slime him, which I thought would have been funny. Uh, and deserving to have him just totally get slimed.
I
But no,
loved
he's just
Slimer in this movie, man.
yeah,
I loved it. It was the best use of Slimer since the first
yeah,
movie because he was in the second one, but he didn't do anything. It was just like there because of the cartoon. This one, he plays a part, like, gives Finn Wolfhard something to do. And then at that, like I said before, like that moment where what was that thing called, Cat? It was like it was that little like ghost that would just inhabit everything it touched.
oh, the possessor.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the possessor. He swallows the possessor, and you're like, dude, my theater was clapping when that happened. I'm like,
right.
that's a theater moment right there.
Yeah.
That's where people are gonna cheer and shit. And it worked. It was great.
Well, since we mentioned that, I might as well mention the thing I alluded to earlier, which is when they go to the library, you kind of forgiven for forgetting that in the first movie, that's the first ghost they go to find is the one in the library, and they don't have any proton packs or anything. They're just monitoring it, and they flee in terror, and they don't do anything about it. So you see that ghost still in the library and doing the same thing it was doing last time. I thought, okay, that's actually kind of clever.
Well, the first one was so great because the beginning of the movie, they knew paranormal existed and they believed in it, but they didn't know what to do.
Right. It's like they're just excited to see it. But I mean, little plot holes aside, all the movies kind of have that in some respect. Like even the first one, it's like, okay, these guys are all, they don't have any money. They have to, what is it? They sold Ray's house.
They like triple refinanced Ray's house or whatever.
Yeah, to acquire it, but then they're suddenly able to overnight come up with all this perfect technology to be able to do this, and little silly things, but whatever. I didn't really mind it because again, it's a comedy. It's like they say, all the sins of the script can be forgiven if it's funny.
The first movie approaches the Ghostbusters like they're plumbers, like they're just guys that they're not action guys. Like you don't ever get an action scene. You just see like guys standing there pointing things, it's like, and it almost feels like they're plumbers, like they're there to like exterminate something that's there. And then they move on. And that scene, my favorite scene in all of Ghostbusters is the hotel scene where they destroy that like dining hall. Like,
trying to, yeah.
Where Venkman pulls out the thing. He's like, I always wanted to do this. And he just pulls, and all the dishes break.
No, wait, what? That was Slimer that they caught in the first one, right?
That was Slimer, yeah. That whole.
So somehow he's gotten out in the second one to be.
Yeah, he got out in the. He was there.
Oh, no, that's right. The EPA guy shuts it down in the first one, or was that the second one?
Well, no, in the first one, he lets all the guys. Walter Peck lets everything go.
Yeah. Okay, that's right. Okay, so that's how he got out. Okay, yeah.
And I do like that about this new one is like they do the same thing where the containment unit gets opened. So now you have this whole new. I mean, if this one makes money, even though this movie didn't cost that much to make, which is good. So even if it makes a little bit of money, we'll get a part 3 where they have.
No, it costs $100 for this one.
I thought it cost $80. Cost $100.
That's what it was reported the other day, but now it's changed. It says it was reported $100.
Well, I know this one.
Afterlife costs $75.
This one costs a shitload in advertising because it's everywhere,
Yeah.
But I hope it does okay enough to merit one more because I'll be there for one more for sure, But who knows? Who knows? It's not expected to do bad, but not good either. Like 45 million this weekend, I think. That's not great, but it's not
for a movie you got 100+ marketing sunk into. I don't know because
it's better than Madam Web.
The previous movie made $229 million against a $75 million production budget.
I think this one will probably beat that, but maybe just because of inflation. I don't know.
Yeah, they haven't released today's box office numbers yet, but it made $16 million between Thursday and Friday. So
yeah, I saw that. Not great, but not awful. A lot of people go on Saturdays, during the day. So
yeah.
But I hope it does good, because even though I don't love it, I still love this franchise, and I know nobody really wanted it to be a franchise. I get it. Ghostbusters 1 is like a perfect movie. You know, you could have left it alone, but but it's a moneymaker. So why not do more? And you have these like young up and coming stars like Finn Wolfhard and stuff that are still a part of it. Even though Finn Wolfhard had barely anything to do in this movie, he probably brought in some audience,
Yeah, even though he's like not funny like at all.
Nothing. No, he didn't do shit in this movie. He did
He's just a regular kid. And it's like, okay, that's kind of how I feel about all the kids. Like, okay, there's the kids. Kind of like how all the Jurassic Park sequels feel obligated to bring in kids for main characters at some point.
So what did you think about I noticed this a little bit, but I didn't really take it to heart or care about it because it's not why I watch a movie. But do you think that Phoebe and the ghost had some sort of like chemistry together as like I don't know. I don't like talking about this kind of stuff, but you know what I mean? There was something there, right? Or are people just crazy?
I didn't feel it. Like she was upset, so she was
I
talking
think
to
she
her.
just wanted to see what it was like to be dead, but a lot of people are going like, "Oh, she was in love with her," and I'm like, I don't know if I
I think that it is a little weird that it got so far where Phoebe was willing to try and do that. It's like that was admittedly contrived because we need to figure out how to get the villain out of the orb. But it's like, well, there's a million other ways in the script that you could come up with for that. Then besides, because the fact that he's while trapped in the orb, Garaka is still able to influence the ghosts in the lab. Then just have one of the ghosts in the lab free him or something. It's like this idea that she wants to feel what it's like to be a ghost. I'm like, I didn't really buy that. I'm like, wait,
no,
what?
that scene was the worst scene in the movie where she dies in the thing, and I was like, oh my god, like you have no idea what you're dealing with. Like this is not good. But I get it. I get it. Like
plus after they spent the whole last movie trying to make it seem like she's really smart and ahead of her years, so to speak.
Yeah, she was they really fucked Phoebe up in this movie. I thought she was a lot dumber because she was so smart in the first movie. She was a Spangler,
Right, and now she's just. I mean, they learned their lesson from the first movie. The people are like, "Hi, like this is Ghostbusters. We want to see the Ghostbusters," and so but they felt obligated to make her quasi main character because they need to give her something to do. Kind of like Paul Rudd is the biggest name. We need to give him something to do.
Yes, exactly.
And like you said, Film Wolfhard, they gave him the whole Slimer subplot because they need to give him something to do. But I didn't find these things to be necessarily huge side plots, which is why I felt it still kind of gelled decently enough.
Yeah, no, I agree. And when I was watching the movie, I didn't necessarily see that connection. I mean, I thought maybe like it kind of seemed like it was going there, but then in the end, nothing happened. So it's kind of ambiguous,
Yeah. But that was another interesting thing they never really explain either. When Melody says, I can't cross over to the afterlife because I need to like redeem myself or something. And it's like, that's a whole new concept. It's like, again, something that's there for this. I feel the only reason the Melody character exists is because they heard what the fans had to say about the previous movie. And it's like, okay, we can't put Phoebe front and center. We need this to be more of a Ghostbusters movie, but we also need to give her something to do. So let's just come up with this weird, side plot with the Melody character. And that's how
she was pretty front and center. Yeah.
Yeah, because they try and make that seem like a thing, and she's the one who ultimately convinces Melody to do the right thing in the end. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everything okay?
Yeah, people are just screaming over the street. I got it.
You got some company?
No.
So I'm gonna load up a clip. It might take me a second here because, like I said, everybody, I'm still getting used to StreamYard, but there's a scene in the trailer and in all of the like screen captures, Kat, that's not in the movie. And it's a scene where Bill Murray's Venkman is talking to Paul Rudd's character down in the containment area. Do you know what image I'm talking about?
I don't remember now.
Oh, dude, it's like, oh my god. I'm like, why the fuck wasn't this in the movie? Because it's like it's like Bill Murray talking to Paul Rudd about like, like whatever. I don't know. Like he's just like he's having a moment with him and talking about like, hey, here's what this is all about, and it seemed like a heartwarming moment, and they don't ever have it in the fucking movie. But I'm gonna bring it up, so keep talking about the movie while I bring it up, Kat.
Yeah, I don't remember that scene at all.
Well, it wasn't in the movie. It wasn't in the
No,
movie.
I mean, I don't remember it from the trailer.
From the trailer? Oh, you'll okay. I'm bringing it up now. Hey, it's loading. Sorry, guys. I'm just getting used to this shit. Should have brought it up earlier. Okay. So let's see. Tell me if you can see this.
There's an army of ghosts, and we're the Ghostbusters. What would you guys have done back in the day?
I'd have showered and hit the clubs.
Well, that's really helpful. The city needs us.
You know what I'm talking about?
Well, that's literally the first time I've seen any clip from that.
But did you see that clip where he's
No,
talking?
I said yeah. Well, you just played it now, but that's literally the first time I've seen any footage of them down in the container.
Yeah, I don't know how to stop it, but let me.
There's an army of ghosts, and we're the Ghostbusters. What would you guys have done back in the day?
I'd have showered and hit the clubs.
Well, that's really helpful. The city needs us.
He goes, "What would you guys have done back in the like?" It's basically Paul Rudd talking to Bill Murray. I bet you that scene is awesome, dude. Like, why did they cut that out?
I don't know if his response was like, "Oh, I would have showered." It's like,
well, didn't he say I would have showered
really.
and hit the clubs? Like, oh my god! I'm guessing in the Blu-ray we'll see that scene, but holy shit! Like, why'd they cut that out? Like, it's Paul Rudd and Bill Murray.
Well, you can tell there's another rewrite somewhere because when he shows up at the end, he's already in his Ghostbusters uniform. Whereas,
yeah, that's
there
true.
you see that he's wearing like a scarf and a different like suit or whatever.
Well, I love it. I love it when Bill Murray shows up to help fight the ghosts because he just couldn't be bothered to be in more of the movie. And then he just finds a bottle of whiskey that I guess has been there for 35 years. He takes a sip of it. And then the next time we see him, he's wearing sunglasses for no apparent reason whatsoever.
Unless the firehouse, because of how old it is, were declared a city landmark. And that would be the only reason I could think of.
Yeah.
It wasn't torn down.
Probably, yeah.
Kind of like there's in the sequel, they shot exteriors and interiors at a firehouse in Los Angeles that looks very much the same. And it's still standing because it's not been a firehouse since I think 1960, but because there was a controversy that they spent way too much money to make this extremely lavish interior for this firehouse with public funds.
Yeah.
And when it got shut down, though, I think it became like a landmark, so it's still there in the city, and they used it for some exteriors and a little bit of interior filming on the sequel. But
I think you're right. I think you're 100. Yeah, you're 100%. That's definitely what it was. Yeah, good call. That it had to have been. Well, but again, when you have Ghostbusters 2, where they kind of discredit the Ghostbusters completely, it's just like nobody even knows anything. I don't know. It's.
Well,
but I think you're.
They're not. It's not about. It's an SNL skit. That's why they're not trying to put that much. I don't want people to think about it too hard. There's no reason.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah, you're right. You're not supposed to really fucking. It's not supposed to be a cinematic universe.
That's why there was nothing remotely logical about the whole Egon Spengler backstory in Afterlife. He's been discovering this whole Gozer thing out in Oklahoma or whatever, and he didn't tell the other Ghostbusters about it. He's been doing this for decades.
Oh no, you know why it was done, Kat, because it was just it was a big we love you to Harold Ramis. That's all it was.
Right, but why? And then is feeling the need to set the story in Oklahoma. It's like,
well, that's the thing. I always thought Egon was from New York, like everyone else. Like, did he grow up in Oklahoma? Why did he get this house? And how did the Ghostbusters car end up there?
And why did all the Gozer stuff? What was that doing in Oklahoma again? Did they ever say? What?
Yeah,
Oklahoma, like what is the, it just
doesn't make any fucking sense.
No, it doesn't. It's like, this movie is at least trying to be a Ghostbusters movie, and it has the problem where it has to straddle both the new generation and the old generation. But I don't think they would come up with a reason to bring the OG characters back again if this succeeds. And I have a feeling this won't succeed because it's like, with it getting review bombed as much as it is, like 43% of 208 critics
Yeah, but the audience, it's like a
The
90.
audience score is 85%, so hopefully
Okay,
they come through. But they also, I think, spent a little too much money on it. Then again, it's more expensive to shoot in New York.
you're right. Yeah. Well, they didn't shoot in New York. They shot in London.
Oh, okay. They shot in London. Okay, that's
Yeah, dude, the firehouse was a set that they used in Ghostbusters 2, which was from London. So everything in New York was probably just like secondary photography or whatever. So yeah, they didn't shoot it in New York.
Don't you love it that
You can
Hollywood's
tell
Don't you love it that Hollywood?
every time the Ecto One is driving around and there's no cars, you're like, okay, this isn't.
Don't you love it that Hollywood's gotten to this point where no, we're not going to go back to the actual firehouse from the first movie. Let's just go to London, or don't even go to the firehouse from the second movie in Los Angeles. Just go
Oh
to
no,
London.
is that where the second one was? Was in Los Angeles?
Well, that's what I was telling you the story that was the firehouse from the second one. The exteriors and some of the interiors were from one that was in Los Angeles, and it got shut down in 1960 because there had been all this controversy that they spent a ton of money on this really lavish interior for this firehouse, and they used it for a long time, like 30 years or something like that. But if it got shut down and declared a landmark, so it's still there in LA. It looks very much the same on the outside, almost identical to the one in New York.
This one feels New York, though, just like well, the first two felt very New York because obviously that's the whole point. The second movie is about how people in New York act, which is what I liked about the second movie was the slime is being generated by the negative activity of the people. You know, I like that. I really like that aspect of the second one.
Yeah, even though that's another contrived element that it just kind of like, so it just randomly started happening. It's
yeah. How come it didn't happen before?
How is it that none of the other public works people have noticed this traveling through the sewers?
That's true. That's true.
But it's like, that's because it's a SNL comedy. You can take those type of creative leaps.
Sketch. It's hard. Yeah.
Such as Walter Peck, whose political career seemed to have ended in the first Ghostbusters movie, is now.
Yeah, I don't know how you go from a discredited EPA agent to mayor, but whatever. I'll be back in 2 seconds. Keep talking.
Especially with the fact that Walter Peck is the enemy of the Ghostbusters in the first one and causes all the damage to the city and all of this, and you'd think the New Yorkers would maybe remember that, or maybe that's something they forgot too after the first movie, which is why they're willing to elect him mayor in this new one. So I don't know. It's just I thought it was kind of surprising. Oh, they brought him back because you could feel that. Oh, it's 2024. It was 1984, so let's do some anniversary stuff by bringing, the gang back together, as it were. So that, that's there. I think it's fun. It could have been better. Could have used more humor. But they do have that problem though. If this movie succeeds and they make a third one, unless you do another reboot, I mean, you're gonna have to straddle the fact that you have all these useless kids, and I don't know how many of the OG Ghostbusters would be willing to come back at this point. So that's. Because again, it's like there's not much of a story there. It's like each time it's going to be, okay, they catch a ghost or whatever, and then there's one particular malevolent ghost who's going to threaten the entire city. You can do that so many times. Like they did it in the first two. They did it in the reboot, and they did it by recycling the same villain for, Afterlife, but now they've done it here with the admittedly new villain. So, I mean, there's not many places to go from here in terms of coming up with new ideas, unless they do a hard reboot where they could get rid of all the characters and start fresh.
Maybe, but thank you for keeping it going while I used the loo. But I think because this one, a lot of people are saying, Kat, that this one felt like an Extreme Ghostbusters cartoon episode. Like a lot of the stuff with, like, we talked about it, like Annie Potts and like, your villain of the week stuff. I think they could, if they scaled it down just a tiny bit, like financially, I think people still really want to see more of these movies, but I don't think they're not summer blockbusters. So they're not going to make $1 billion or even half of that. But
no, they need to get back. And this is the same for all legacy sequels. They need to stop playing up the nostalgia. What you need to do is just approach it like it's just another movie in the franchise.
Yes.
And people will come. Like, don't keep trying to break the fourth wall in weird ways like they did with Afterlife, or this one where like they have all these callbacks, which admittedly some of them it's funner here, but they haven't completely divorced themselves from the overly serious tone, which I think
Right.
they need to. So, but again, I also feel that there's way too many characters at this point that.
Yeah, there are. Yeah.
And can you come up with another reason to bring the OG Ghostbusters back? It's like, I don't know. Maybe it's time for another reboot if they want to do that.
Well, I think honestly, I think they have one more movie left in them in the tank where they could do something that brings back. I mean, because Ernie Hudson, dude, he's 78. He's 5 years older than Bill Murray, and he looks younger than Bill Murray. Like
I didn't know he was that old. Wow.
78. I was watching him on a podcast, and he was talking about his age. I'm like, holy shit, because he does not look that old.
No.
But you can have that dynamic, the firehouse and all that stuff for maybe one more movie. But again, like I said, scale it back, go back to the original movie where it's not about the CGI and stuff. And, just have one more adventure, but you got to have, before Bill Murray gets too ancient, you got to put him in a little bit more of it and just do one more adventure. And then, like you said, Kat, you can start from scratch or just ace it all together. Just no more. We don't need any more,
Right. Because it's like the Ray character, part of what made him really funny in the first two movies that he's not very worldly yet. Like, he believes in all this paranormal stuff, but he's not like an expert at everything. Whereas in these two movies, it's like, yes, Ray is much older. He's much wiser. And so some of the humor, it's not the same type of humor from him. You don't actually have nearly any of that same humor from him because he's more of like, the sage amongst the Ghostbusters now. And it's not as humorous. Whereas I feel they don't, that's something that the new generation crew does not have. You don't really have your race stance. Like Gary Gruberson is this odd everyman who's just kind of not phased by the fact, oh, okay, there's ghosts now. I turned into a ghost. Okay, whatever, I'm here.
I think that podcast was originally set up to sort of be like a Ray, but then he kind of grew too fast between the movies, and like they just didn't know what to do with him in this one. But obviously they have him living with Ray because like Ray sees something in him. But oh, shut up, Cookie.
Oh wow, I've never heard her cry before.
Can you hear that? She's in the other room.
Why is she hungry?
No, she's being a biatch.
But yeah, just I feel that because they don't really have like they already shot themselves in the foot with making Phoebe the Egon equivalent. She's kind of just a regular kid now, whatever. And it's like I don't really want. That's the thing. It's like I don't want to follow these new kids. Like they didn't put any thought into who they cast for these kids. Like they're not funny. They don't have chemistry. They're not archetypes at all. They're just kind of regular kids. It's like no. It's like I feel almost like they need to do a reboot at this point.
Well, we all know they only put Finn Wolfhard in it for obvious reasons, But I mean, he's fine. Like he's not the same character in this as he is as Mike in Stranger Things. So
but again, I didn't think anything of the podcast Lucky characters either. And it's like, okay, they cast Phoebe well enough for telling that dramatic story, but Ghostbusters isn't a drama. And now that they've done that, it's like you don't have the humor or whatever. Because even Egon was funny because he's super nerdy and super into it and doesn't really pick up on how, like when people come to them distressed or whatever, he's just putting kind of like Venkman, he'll put like a helmet on your head, attach you, hook you up to all these wires and looking at things scientific. Like when he mentions the experiment he's doing at the beginning of the Ghostbusters sequel, he's like,
yeah,
people think they're here for marriage therapy instead, or couples therapy instead.
Oh, dude, that's the best scene in the sequel.
Yeah, but that's the thing is Egon. That's the type of humor with him, and you don't have that with Phoebe at all.
No, you don't. Like when they're like, "You never had a slinky?" He's like, "We had part of a slinky."
Right.
But I straightened it.
Yeah. And where she is not anything like that. It's like this. That's why to me, like, get rid of all the kids. Podcast is just kind of weird. It's like, I don't see anything there with him.
I love podcasts. They just didn't do anything with him in this movie.
I just feel they need to, I guess they're going to have to start fresh. But again, it's something that didn't really need a sequel. Like, has anybody been scrambling for a massive, an ongoing, continuous Ghostbusters franchise? No. I mean, they created that new
Well,
company
no, like
just for 9 years ago now.
Red Letter Media put it best. Like, this should never have been a franchise. It should never have been the first movie's a perfect movie, but you know, money talks. What are you gonna do? You know, like every time you have a great movie, if there's a
Well,
reason to have a sequel, then they're gonna do it.
right,
You
but
know,
here's
even
the
if
thing. The reboot lost $70 million for the studio,
yeah, it did.
but they
Yeah.
still greenlit another one. It's like, and
Well, because they went back. Well, you know what sold that cat was the fact that Ivan Reitman's son was going to direct it and write it, and it worked. The first one's not great. I'm sorry, first one. Afterlife's not. It's not amazing, but like it has heart. You know, it has a big heart to it. You know, and it's such a love letter to his dad. And
you mean
I
the love letter to Harold Ramis, not Ivan Reitman.
oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but Ivan Reitman died too, didn't he?
Well, he died after
Oh, okay. Okay,
After
but
Life
it
died
was I think
2
it was a
months
love
after
letter to
Harold
whatever.
Ramis.
Yeah, it was yeah. And this one even said for Harold too, I think, right? At
Let's
the
say that
end.
for Ivan.
Oh, for Ivan. That's
Ivan
right.
Ivan died 3 months after Afterlife was released.
That's right. This one said Ivan. Yeah,
And then
yeah.
for some reason, they announced in April 2022 that Jason was going to direct this one as well. But then in December 2022, he stepped down and Gil Keenan was hired to direct instead.
Yeah, and I wonder what it would have been had Jason Reitman directed it, because I do think he's a good director. I like a lot of his films, but I don't know. This one turned out fine. It's fine.
Yeah, that's
it's a Ghostbusters movie. It's back in New York. You got a lot of Dan Aykroyd, which is what everybody wants. You don't have a lot of Bill Murray, which sucks, but it is what it is. You know that guy's not going to show up. He's too busy golfing. You know.
Yeah, and then Dan Aykroyd has said before that he's basically retired from show business. Like he came back for Ghostbusters, but he's not looking for. It's not that he wasn't being offered roles; it's that he's not interested. He even mentioned, I think, got an interview 10 years ago. He's like, "No, we had our time. Now it's time to pass it on to the next generation of comedy people," which is too bad because I love Dan Aykroyd. So I mean, if they do another one, then maybe he would come back. But
dude, he became a billionaire off of that Skull vodka that he created. Like he's so fucking rich. He doesn't give a shit.
yeah,
But he still shows up and he's great as he goes right back into the role. You know, because like I said, Ray was always the heart and soul of the Ghostbusters. He was the optimistic one. You know, he's always the loudest one. You know, like Bill Murray, like, yeah, we all love him, but he was always that ghost. Like, you know, Venkman was the guy that just didn't give a shit. You know, like, and Bill Murray, it's perfect because you can tell he doesn't give a shit.
yeah.
I still love seeing him though. And and I was happy to see that Ernie Hudson finally, after the first two, because that role was originally written for Eddie Murphy,
Right.
and then they condensed it down, and he was supposed to be like a naval demolition guy, and then they cut that out to where he was just a guy looking for a job. And I remember some of the interviews where Ernie Hudson's like, "Well, this isn't what I signed up for, but fuck it, it's a paycheck." But he could have been a much bigger role, and I'm happy to see that in these movies they treat him with more respect, and he's the reason all this stuff is still happening. You know,
I hate it when movies and projects do that, where we couldn't get the guy we wanted, so we're just going to rework the script to cut the character down. It's like, no, if it worked in the script, leave it there and just cast somebody else. But no,
I agree, because if you remember. Well, you're too young to remember, but I'm sure you've heard that the original cast was going to be Dan Aykroyd, Jim Belushi, and Eddie Murphy.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Belushi died while they were writing the script, so they put in Bill Murray.
That's right. It was going to be him and Aykroyd traveling.
Yeah, it was going to be the Blues. It was going to be the Blues Brothers, basically fighting ghosts.
Right.
I think it worked out better this way because. As much as I love John Belushi, God rest his soul, Bill Murray's way funnier.
Yeah, and it would just basically be Blues Brothers, but with ghost packs.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Let's give final thoughts on the movie. Let's give a rating. Why not? We're live, so let's give a rating. How about you first, Kat?
I get 3 out of 5.
Okay, so you're going on the 5 scale. 3 out of 5. That's good. That's good. Yeah, I was gonna go like 6, maybe 6.5 on the gulp gauge, which goes to 10. So we're close.
Yeah, we're 3. Yeah, 3 out of 5. 3.25 out of 5. It's pretty close. 3.5. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Dude. People who haven't seen it, I don't think we really spoiled that much. I don't think anyone's even watching. I think there's been a couple of people that have popped on and off. If you have, thank you very, very much.
Well, because this is a movie where you can't really spoil anything because you're not really going to a movie like this for story. You're going there for all the fun.
Yeah, you can't. Well, you can only spoil like punchlines of jokes, which we did not do. But yeah, as far as the story goes, like the main villain is an afterthought until the last 5 minutes of the movie, pretty much. Yeah. But my biggest complaint, Kat, is I wish that there was a moment with Venkman and Walter Peck, and there just wasn't.
Right.
There wasn't, and there needed to be. Why did they not do that? Why not write something hilarious for Bill Murray to say to Walter Peck? It just didn't make any sense. The ending felt so rushed. Like as soon as they defeated the bad entity, like there's like 30 people outside chanting Ghostbusters, and then it's over. And you're like, oh, there should have been some closure. But again, maybe they think there's going to be another one. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure because they founded that new company, Ghost Corps, 9 years ago now, in March 2015, to oversee all these new movies. And I don't know what their long-term plan is. It's like, oh, everything else is getting brought back for legacy sequels. Let's jump on the train. And it's like, okay. And I guess they had the right idea originally, and let's not do the legacy sequel. But then when that didn't work, it's like, no, let's just do a legacy sequel now. Oh, that was too serious. We'll do this other one that's not as serious. It's better.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, okay, you can only go so much further now, but yeah.
No, I agree. Well,
it's kind of like Gozer in the first one. It's like they tease that there's something in Dana's refrigerator, and they don't come back to even mentioning it until much later when the demon dog comes. But it's like,
well, no, that's not true, Kat, because if you remember, she goes, are you sure you're using that thing correctly? He goes, well, I think so, but I'm sure there's no animals in there. Yeah. God, dude, the writing in the first movie was so sharp.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like Gozer's not really a thing in the first movie either. It's like they don't even they hear Dana and other people talking about it, but we don't hear about the lore behind it. It's just kind of there. It's like, oh,
well, that's kind of why I like Afterlife, is because they talk about Ego Shandor. Like they kind of, yeah, they're dredging up another villain from the first movie, but they're giving it more substance. So I didn't mind that in Afterlife, because they're like, oh, Igor Shantor is this guy that, like, he built a building so that, so that like Gozer can come through it. And I was like, well, you didn't get that in the first movie. So I didn't mind it that they brought that back in Afterlife. I thought that was actually kind of clever, personally, but I know a lot of people are like, oh, they're bringing back Gozer. It's like, well, no, it's not that they're bringing back Gozer. They're giving it more substance, Yeah. Do you agree or disagree? It's okay.
That's fine. I just mostly didn't like that movie because.
No, you didn't. You didn't. When we did the review, yeah, you weren't that keen on it.
Yeah, it's like, okay, it's like everything's here, but where are the Ghostbusters? Like even if it's not literally the same characters, it's like, well, you need to have people who are funny and have chemistry. That's a given. It's like, I don't understand what thought process went into that for, I don't know.
What are you doing?
It's a nightmare. Ray smuggled them back from Somerville.
There was just too many of those things, and they just made no sense in this movie.
Yeah, I can't remember why they were in Somerville either. It's like, oh, let's just bring them.
I liked him in Afterlife because there had to have been a deleted scene, Kat, where Paul Rudd's character was getting high in his car. Because remember, he goes into the Target and starts buying ice cream. And he's like, ooh, ice cream. And then you start seeing those and you see his eyes kind of shift. I guarantee you, like, that scene was written where Paul Rudd was getting stoned, and then he just went in there and he saw those and he thought they were just part of his high or whatever.
Yeah.
But in this movie, it's just like, why the fuck are they there again? Oh yeah.
Well, like, and that's another thing. If the kid's annoyed by them, then why did you take them with you? Especially if he was only supposed to be gone for the summer, because oh, I'm at space camp, which means he's going to be coming back at the end of the summer. So why did you take? I guess he brought him to show Ray, and Ray didn't want all of them. Maybe.
Well, like I said, how do you go to space camp and trick your parents into going to space camp when they have to pay for it? Like, how much does that cost? Or did he make his parents like pay for it and then just not go?
Or did Ray pay for it?
All right,
I didn't find that funny how Ray is sitting there and he's just fine destroying everybody's family heirlooms.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. I thought that was probably one of the funniest bits, how dry that is. The old lady comes in with the watch and she's
oh, dude, the
hammer gets the clicks.
What did you think of Kamal in this? I thought he was hilarious. A lot of people are like, "Oh, that guy's so annoying." I thought he was great in this.
I thought he was really funny.
Yeah,
like, he walks into the room and he's like, "Are those manacles for sex?" No, oh, I heard it just as I said it.
Yeah, I just thought he was a whole new dynamic. He did a whole different thing. Like, and my biggest problem is he never had a moment with Ray, which would have been kind of fun, like that, because the thing I was laughing at the most was when he was with Venkman and Venkman's throwing pens at his head. I love that scene.
Yeah.
But remember, cats, with Ghostbusters,
It's a major disgrace. Forget MIT or Stanford now. They wouldn't touch us with a 10-meter cattle prod.
You're always so concerned about your reputation. Einstein did his best stuff when he was working as a patent clerk.
You know how much a patent clerk earns? No. Personally, I like the university. They gave us money and facilities. We didn't have to produce anything. You've never been out of college. You don't know what it's like out there. I've worked in the private sector. They expect results.
For whatever reasons, Ray, call it fate, call it luck, call it karma. I believe that everything happens for a reason. I believe.
And that that's the dialogue that they used in the Afterlife trailer. Call it fate, call it luck, call it karma. I love that scene. They tried to make it like dramatic in the Ghostbusters Afterlife trailer, but in the movie, it's pretty funny.
See, that's the thing. It's like the Afterlife tried to take everything that was funny and turn it into some dramatic, nostalgic thing.
It did. Yeah, it did.
You don't need to do that. It's like, if you go back and watch the first movie, like, if your introduction to Ghostbusters was Afterlife, you get excited to go, wow, I gotta see this first movie, and you watch it, and like, you'd be like, huh? It's like,
I agree with that 100%. But yeah, so my takeaway is you like this one better.
Yeah, I liked it better because I like that it's not as self-serious. It's not treating everything with, glorious reverence. It's like, no, it's a Ghostbusters movie. Let's have fun. It's Ghostbusters.
Yeah, and it's finally back in New York where it belongs. Yeah.
I mean, if they ever wanted to, they might have to leave New York if they want to keep doing it. If they want to come up with new ideas, like take them on the road or something. Okay, sure. But for this one, it did what it needed to do.
Should they? Do you think they should go to France?
Well, not necessarily France. I just mean, like, if the idea is that they go after haunts, there's all sorts of famous haunted places in America or wherever that you could send the Ghostbusters to and have a fun time. That's kind of what I think they should have done, instead of just trying to keep coming up with. It's like, well, why keep coming up with fake ghosts or whatever you make up when we have plenty of places that are purportedly haunted, that people believe in that type of stuff, and just have, that be your Ghostbusters movie or something.
Well, you know what they should do, Kat, is they should look at like what people find haunted these days. Like there's areas in like Kansas that people find haunted.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. And just make it a different adventure every time where they're like, yeah, New York is great, but you don't have to do that every time. If they do a third one, if they actually get to do a third one, it should be somewhere different. because we've seen this now. We've seen it twice with the old cast, and we've now seen it once with the new cast. Now it's time to like, oh shit, we got to go to this place because ghosts don't just exist in New York City; they exist everywhere.
Yeah.
Either way, I found it entertaining. It's a fun movie. I like it. I mean, it's not great. It's not great, but it's not bad. But yeah, I kind of want to stay out. Let's see. What else do we have? Do we have any chats? I don't think so. Let's see. Hello, CG. Hello. That person is gone because I think we only have 2 people watching, which is me and you. Do you want to hang out for a little bit? Do we have anything else we want to talk about other than Ghostbusters? Or have you seen any of the new trailers? Should we talk about those?
I haven't really seen many new trailers, no.
You haven't seen the Beetlejuice trailer or the
I saw that. That was kind of like, whatever. It was
that's like a super teaser where you don't see shit. Yeah. But I thought the Alien trailer was pretty good.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that.
Yeah.
Hopefully they stick more with like isolation and the original Alien and stuff like that. But
for sure.
Anyway, this was fun. Thank you, Kat. Thanks.
It was fun.
Oh my God. I guess we'll end this. But thanks everyone for whoever was watching. I didn't really pay attention to who was watching. I know a couple of my homies, wrote in, but this was fun, Kat, and thanks for helping me figure this out and making me feel comfortable with it. And talking about Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, because we talked about Afterlife together. So I was happy to talk about this one. Seems like we both are more high on it than low on it, which is good. And please follow Kat on the Fantasmagorium Show every Thursday. What time, Kat?
7 Pacific.
7 Pacific for Fargo stuff and all kinds of shenanigans with Scotty R37. You never know what you're going to get. But yeah, this was great. And this Thursday, I think we're going to officially start Thirsty Thursdays, where we're just going to have random people on talking about random subjects, and I'm looking forward to it. And Kat, obviously you're always going to be invited. So it's just whenever you have time to come on, you are always welcome. You'll get the link ahead of time. But I cannot thank you enough, Kat. Thank you. This made my experience much less stressful, because as you know, off camera, I was kind of nervous.
Yeah, cool.
All right. You're the best. All right. We'll
Thanks.
talk to you. We drink our cinema, guys. Later.